Hey guys, welcome back. I gotta figure this stuff out. I hope I'm streaming to Twitch right now. I'm supposed to be doing both, but maybe even starting tomorrow. I think I'm gonna switch it up so that there's, Oh, jeez, got my. Hold on, guys. My bad. The cover on it. I might have been muffled. Um, yeah. So gotta figure out this whole thing streaming to Twitch and YouTube. I mean, it's been working out pretty good, but except I get like a dual stream onto YouTube for some reason. I don't know what's going on. And then Twitch shows that I'm not even live, even though, like, I think I am. I mean, the thing pops up. I mean, like right now, it tells me that I'm offline. So I'm not sure without opening something else up. Anyways, you guys let me know if yeah, see if I am live or not, because it says I'm offline, so and the counter isn't even. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Anyways, I think I'm streaming. Oh, I mean, yeah, I know I'm streaming on YouTube because I can actually see myself, my broadcast right there. Except the whole thing with the chat never seems to work. You see, I totally forgot that I have something else. Oh. Anyways, you know what? I'm just gonna try to figure it out for next time. Set it up beforehand. Check out the stream, the chats. But anyways, let me see. Let's see what we got today. I don't know if you guys have been following the stuff going on with the conflict that's going on between the U.S. and allies in the Middle East and Iran. Sorry. But I mean, there's big implications, obviously, for the construction industry, and investments into rebuilding once this conflict is over. Whether or not the regime will fall, it seems like it, just because so many people there in Iran are just tired of it, tired of the senseless violence that the regime brings about. And so, because of the bombings from the U.S. and Israel, there's a lot of military installations, obviously, that have been hit. A shit ton of them. So all that stuff's gonna have to be rebuilt. Of course, right now the whole thing is that Iran is being choked. It doesn't have any money between the blockade, sanctions, and the sheer destruction of what the U.S. and Israelis have done right now. But if everything goes the way it looks like it's going, and Iran does free itself from the Islamic Republic, from the regime that is there, the Islamists. What I've heard is that they're going to have since they have the sanctions removed at that point, they're going to have access to all their frozen funds. They're going to be able to sell oil again. But that might not be enough as far as the oil goes, because as I've heard, I didn't know this previously, but once you stop oil from flowing from a well, you actually can't start it again. And so right now, apparently, because of the blockade, Iran can't sell its oil. It can't export it out. Ships aren't allowed to come in to dock at Iranian ports. They can only use the ports from the other countries that use the Persian Gulf, like Oman, the UAE. Actually, I think also Yemen. Like I said, Oman, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Not sure, I can't remember about Yemen. But anyways, so because of the blockade, Iran can't sell its oil, which means all the oil that it's pulling out of the ground, putting it in barrels, is just sitting there, and they're gonna run out of storage space for it, and that's happening very quick. So if they have to shut them down, I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to have to invest in, I guess maybe new wells, drilling a new spot, and that. The problem is that, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, the U.S. and Israeli um, fighter jets and the militaries started targeting some of the infrastructure. President Trump said he didn't want to do it. It was pretty much a last resort type of thing, so that Iran still had something to sell, something to use in order to get the oil and their energy out of the ground. And so that once the conflict is over, they can turn around and sell it, and then the new government, the country, can have those funds, and they can use those funds to start repairing things in the country. And apparently the diaspora is looking to go back to Iran, and at that point they will be able to invest in rebuilding Iran. I know I've seen a few streamers and stuff saying, yeah, when Iran is free, they're Iranian, they're gonna go back, and some of them are saying, hey, we can open businesses. There's one guy from England. I know he does like news, world news, but because of Iran and he's Iranian, he's been covering that most of his streams lately. And so he says he wants to start, or he wants to go in and do the first pub in Iran, because, as you know, under Islamic or Sharia law, you're not allowed to drink things. Bacon is bad, pork is bad, and so he wants to do that. He enjoys both of those, drinking, bacon, other types of ham and things like that. So a lot of people that are Iranian do say that they are willing to go back. They want to go back home. So we'll see what happens there. But as far as the construction goes, which is what we concentrate on anyways, or I concentrated on here, that would be very good to get some contractors in and do, pretty much do their thing. There's a lot of money to be made, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, we need to get quality work done. The energy or the infrastructure companies that go in, I know there's a few obviously that can go in and make repairs and things, which actually is going to lead into another thing. They've got the funds, they've got the capital to start it, and then that way Iran obviously can pay them for their services to get everything up and running again, get things updated. Because if you know anything about the Islamic occupation, it happened back in 1979. We're almost 50 years into this, and pretty much from what I've heard is that their infrastructure from 1979 is what they're using right now. They really haven't updated anything. They've barely been doing any maintenance. They just have been kind of keeping it running enough so that they can use the oil, sell the oil, sell it off and make the money. And of course they take that money, they don't really use it to help the people, to repair more infrastructure, build new things, other than what the regime has been doing and building up their military, or their weapons, their apparatuses to help them, their own infrastructure for building drones and building missiles and that. That's where that money is going. So now they're going to be able to concentrate the people, the new government that's going to be working for the people, will be able to go ahead and make those repairs and everything else using that money. Like I said, those contractors are going to be able to come in to do the infrastructure work on that. There's going to be some power plant, stuff. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep any nuclear. They said new transitional government that would go into place said that they would be turning over all of the enriched uranium, and I don't know if they're going to keep not keep that, but if they're going to be able to get just civilian grade uranium, which civilian grade is for energy purposes, so they can run nuclear reactors for power, which honestly, I'm for it. It's a lot cleaner. Of course, we know there's some waste, but there, as far as the construction goes and the upkeep, and given the amount of history that we've had, there have been a lot less deaths due to either operating machinery or in the actual building of the structures and things like that. There have been less deaths compared to traditional coal and electricity plants, or coal powered electricity plants and things of that nature. So and with the waste, I guess there are companies doing research right now where we can either reuse the waste or we can repurpose the waste to actually make other things, or put into other things. And that's always a good thing. I believe NASA, for some equipment, would actually benefit from having some of that, either keeping instruments warm or actually using it for power. If you don't know, like Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, as we know, they were launched back in 76 and 77, I believe, or 77, 78. But the point is, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 do have nuclear material, but it's not so much that they're generating power from the nuclear nation, but it's thermal. So the warmth, they use that in there to generate power, to power the instruments and things like that. Of course, those things were only designed to really last like 10 years or so. I think it was 10 years. And they're still going, they're still communicating. And I know just a couple of days, or a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Voyager 1 is now a full light day away from us. And it's still going. They're still trying to preserve some of the power. Obviously, they shut instruments down. They update the coding every so often. Kind of turn something on here, turn things off there to conserve as much power possible. And they've been doing this for decades now, and that's why the Voyager are still out there. Of course, we hear mostly about Voyager 1 because that's the one, obviously, that made the leap across the interstellar, or is now into interstellar space, has left our solar sphere, I think it is, where the influence of our star, the sun, is no longer present, or pretty much, no longer present in the readings for Voyager 1. Anyways, that's a tangent. I love science, like NASA, space, and things like that. Going back to the whole thing with Iran. So there will be opportunity there. Of course, us here, I'm in the United States, on the west coast of the United States. Of course, that means companies from here will have to send personnel all the way over there, have to send tools, possibly equipment to go over there. But it would be a great win-win for all of us around. Construction companies would make money, people going over there would make money, Iran and their people would have updated everything, to the latest technologies, even, so that they can continue pumping out oil and continue to make money and help the Iranian people recover and fund the reconstruction of things, and and actually new construction in their country for infrastructure and other things, like it was going on prior to the takeover of the Islamic regime. We'd be a lot better off. So big opportunities there. But yeah, it would be a lot. Be traveling for people from here. But of course, like the guys that work on the oil rigs that are gone for weeks or even months at a time on the rig, be the same thing. You go over. When you work on the oil rig, you're over the sea. When you work like in Iran and other countries, you've gone across the sea, right? So, then that's a whole big old thing. The logistics of getting all the equipment there, getting the people there, their tools, and if there's not enough housing, they might even send, Iran might even have these U.S. companies come over, start building, for lack of a better word, like barracks and things like that for the hotel. For the construction people that are going to be coming over and doing all that stuff, or even, let's say Hilton or some other big hotel chain can come and build a couple hotels in the area to house all the people that are going to be going over there doing construction. But of course, it's not just the people from the U.S. because the Iranians, actual Iranians, not Islamic regime people, they're pretty smart. Some of them have some of the best doctors, some of the best engineers in the world come out of Iran. It's very unfortunate that it's come to the point where a lot of them have to flee in order to, you know, be able to practice and actually make a living and things like that. But don't get me wrong, the Iranian people are pretty smart. And I think after this whole thing is over, this is how it's gonna work. They're gonna be designing, they're gonna be doing all that stuff, right? Once the sanctions are lifted and things, knowing from what I have learned in the last 3 or 4 months from Iranian people, I think a lot of them will even volunteer. You know, the engineers and the doctors to get this stuff going, and do some design work to help whatever they can. Of course, they would love to be compensated, and I'm pretty sure even if they want to volunteer their services, I'm sure they're going to get paid. But anyways, it's just going to be a good win-win everywhere, all the way around. And just like, you know, there's subcontractors that come in, they specialize obviously in an area like mill work, right? Concrete, reinforced steel, everything else, MEPs, the electrical, the plumbing, yeah, and even those guys, it's not just regular plumbing, it's not regular HVAC, mechanical stuff that's going on in the plants is very highly specialized, you know, with the high pressure and low pressure, the thermodynamics going on in order to turn crude oil into viable petroleum for other things, even just to pump it out of the ground to put it on ships, then the crude oil to other countries for refinement. I mean, it's a big process, a big logistics challenge all the time. So hopefully everything works out and we can make money and make this place a lot better than what it is now. So that's where we are with that. Let's see, I haven't really seen very much myself as far as, where are we? There we go. Okay, so haven't seen, like I said, a whole lot with the construction news, anything really groundbreaking going on right now. I'm going to do this, open tab. I have seen, if you've been in the market, looking at the job market for for job, you probably noticed there are a lot project managers and estimators that are being hired. And I mean like a shit ton. Some senior project managers, a lot of project managers, estimators, a couple of junior estimators, and some senior estimators also. I've seen, I think, like maybe 1 or 2 project executive, some project coordinators, few project engineer jobs. It's kind of been all over the place, from generals to subs, millwork, MEP. Engineers are starting to pick up, I think, in this civil area. I've seen a couple of those. Let's see. Oh, come on. There we go. Where? Let's see. All right, I pulled up the. I don't. Oh. Ew. Uh-oh. Going to it. All right, let's click around. Oh, actually, let me look, preview this, make sure this how this. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to window down a bit so that we can get the full window straight. Bring this in like so. Perfect. Yep. Okay, we're gonna switch over. You can see my screen. Oh, but hold on, I have to myself because not a liar for some reason. Or did I cover myself up? Hold on. Aha. Shrink myself down into the corner. And let's bring myself. What happened? I was messing around with some camera settings and I accidentally get myself off of this in here. Move myself up. Oh. Okay, cool. Gonna go over to here. There it is. Boom. All right. So construction. If you take a look here, U.S. construction slows as manufacturing shifts to expansion. Why would that happen? If they're expanding, why is construction slowed down? I would imagine, that they would actually be construction would, start picking up, because if they're expanding, then just to see, right? You need structure, you need a new place to expand into. But it could be that they're expanding from a small shop to an existing bigger shop. I can see why that would slow down construction. So as you can see here, following the pandemic, we had says a strong wave of manufacturing investment, but of course that's not the whole truth, because we all know construction did slow down. Manufacturing came back really, as we know, it did start picking up a little bit, but it was still nowhere near where it needed to be for us to depend on ourselves. A lot of it were depending on China for a lot of the drugs, pharmaceuticals, and as we know with President Trump, that is changing, and pharmaceutical companies are starting to invest and bring everything in here. Now, of course, we need to make sure that those tax incentives and the other incentives that he brought about, we need to make sure that we keep honoring those, and hopefully we can extend some of that to other companies, smaller companies, which he kind of did in the big beautiful bill. We need to make sure that we keep some of those incentives, if not all, in order to keep manufacturing here in the US, from industrial to the industrial base to machining and things like that. Because yes, we do need depend less on the world and more on ourselves, and kind of, I'm not saying that we completely go back to how it was before, where yes, we made everything, things got cheaper because China and other countries were like, hey, now we're tooled up, we have the capability, and of course their economy means that they don't have to pay their workers as much, and so they can offer goods that cost less. Although we have seen from China that we don't always get the exact quality that we want, or they offer something, right? A company sends their stuff over in order to manufacture it cheaper, but then they steal it, right? They steal the intellectual property, and they start producing, and come on, it's not private industry over there that's doing it, it's the Chinese government. They're a communist country. They have their hands in every single industry and every single company that exists in China. So they are willing participants in the counterfeit materials or products that come to the US. Intellectual property goes there. They don't prosecute anyone for stealing intellectual property, even though there are contracts signed and this and that, and they just turn a blind eye because they know that means more money coming into those companies and more money going to the government. So if the US, if we can start manufacturing again, And even though we pay a little more, but we get things and we support our fellow Americans, then it's a win-win for us. We know that the tariffs have been helping. I heard a story not too long ago about a contractor that does, I believe he builds decks, and there's a certain there's a company, an American company, that makes all the stuff that he needs, right, for the deck and the columns and all that stuff. So you really buy a system. You kind of tell them what you need, or you go to a distributor, and you give them your list of everything that you need, right? And so they'll price it out, and here you go. So I guess one day he actually went and he said, you know what? Because of everything that's going on and everything that President Trump has been doing, he said, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and order how I usually do. When they gave him the quote back, he was very surprised because he didn't think it was gonna be as much as they quoted him. And he asked, hey, like, what's going on? They said, well, because of the tariffs, prices for those products have gone up from that company. So as a curiosity, he said, you know what, if that's the case, can you give me a price for the American made product? It was a $200 difference on like a $5,000 bill. So if that's the difference, I would much rather support the American made company, or the American based company that has the product that's American made, and if it's only a $200 difference. And this is exactly the power that these tariffs have in order to level the playing field. People might bitch and moan because things aren't cheaper, but you know what, we're supporting American companies. That's the point. So now everybody on the level playing field, of course we're gonna pick the American company because we know it was made domestically. It doesn't have to travel. Even though it was cheaper in the past, you can see how much cheaper it was, and those people are paid crap, and that's what kept prices down. And even though they come overseas and everything, even with all the traveling, the American made products are here for us to be able to make money and support not only ourselves but support our Americans and bring back the middle class and bring back jobs, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in the machining or anything else, the building, everything. We need to get off of relying on other countries for everything. Okay, like I said, yes, manufacturing. So here, right, and if you read there about the third sentence, it was driven by a combination of supply chain reconfiguration and government incentives. However, the momentum is now clearly fading, with leading indicators pointing to a sharp slowdown in new project activity. Of course, we know stuff like this is going to happen. The market goes up, the market goes down. If there's it's a surge because there's a bit of a baseline, right? I mean, there's up and downs even in the baseline of the amount of construction going on in the country. But you can't sustain growth forever. There will be dips here and there. We know this, especially in the construction industry. There are times that are good times, booming times, and then we have a drop off. And that's why as a construction worker, you should always be saving for a rainy day, because you never know when it's going to happen. There are some indicators here and there as we go along, and it's a bit of a cycle. There's very sharp drops, and then there's the bumps in the road, or dips in the road, as you might think of the analogy. Being in construction all my life, I've seen it happen, with my dad and everything. There's times, we just couldn't splurge on things. There's other times like, yeah, okay, we can take a family trip to somewhere, right? And obviously after presidential elections, once the next president's sworn in, there's a dip a little bit. We kind of feeling the water. Let's see what's going on. How are they going to treat things? Or, see how things are going to go. Policies and things, some policy shifts obviously really suck. Some policy shifts are good, bring good times. Let's invest in infrastructure. let's say, like this, invest in manufacturing. And currently, right now, with President Trump, that's what he wants to bring America back. He wants to make America great again. And I completely agree that we should be investing domestically. And I'm sure your pocketbooks, whether you're a project manager, in project management, project engineer, project coordinator, we see these things. And of course, like I always say, it's better to be busy and employed rather than unemployed and sitting on the couch and not making any money. So that's why, in relation to this, even just that first paragraph, it's not that momentum is fading. It could be now. Like I said, I haven't read the whole thing, but there's a supply and there's a demand. As there's a lot of work and these companies are building, then yeah, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of money in there. But once those projects are completed, it's like you have your demand, you're feeding the demand. What's going to happen? There's not going to be as much demand as you're completing projects, so of course it's going to slow down. You can't build forever. Even though they're demoing places, updating places, adding to places, it gets to a point where they're good. They can start manufacturing, they can start doing their thing, using their building. You move on to the next project. But at some point, there's going to be so many contractors with, and not enough projects to go around. And this is where the market takes a dip. In construction, that's where we know this. If you're new to the game, if you're only been here for a year or two, you're kind of in the middle of a little bit of a patch right now. Okay, it will get better, but at the same time, you're gonna have to get yourself ready for another dip. You might be out of work for a couple weeks, a couple months. You don't know. This is why, if you notice, sometimes these people that do, work, I guess, not off the books or side hustles, things like that, is because of things like this. And it happens everywhere. It happens in retail, happens, like in manufacturing. It happens all the time. Right now, what's big is aerospace. You've seen the tower for SpaceX. You've seen the towers for Blue Origin, the ones for NASA, their buildings. But what happens? Those are projects that happen for years. But once they're completed, then we need to find work for those construction workers somewhere else. Now, right now, like I said, the aerospace is booming, although there's a little bit of a slowdown, right? Because they're getting their physicists, they're getting their engineers still. There's still startups that are planning, they're developing for the colonization on the moon and then onto Mars. So they're testing out things, but that's a lot right now of, getting the designs done, getting small things. So they're getting the projects where they'll build a small facility. Once they're ready to go to market, then they might need a larger facility. And so there'll be a construction project, maybe 1 or 2 years. The same thing. Once that's done, the demand is going to slow down. It's going to dwindle. It's going to get smaller, which means the construction, that niche in construction will slow down. You guys need to go somewhere else. But at some point, the market's going to shrink. That always happens. So be ready for it if you're new. Okay? Don't get discouraged. You might have to do a side hustle for a bit. But the thing is, you always have to hustle. You have to hustle your work. Of course, unless you join the union, those guys are just a bunch of crybabies, and they, the union goes out and tries to lobby and get work for them. They can't work their own thing. That's what my dad never went. Well, he went union towards the end because of things that were going on financially and stuff, and it was a dip in the market, I believe, happened. But he's out of there. He's not depending on them anymore. He had a lot of arguments with BAs and stuff on job sites and whatnot. But anyways, that's beside the point. Getting back to everything else, I know we went from one thing to another. So you know, look at, there will be growth, there will be shrinkage. It's not the end of the world. If you can't take it, you need to find yourself another industry. But for a family of builders, this is what we do. You know, save for that rainy day. You know, and that's really all I can really tell you. I can't give you financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do. I would really say try to save as much of your money as you possibly can, especially if you're a young one, if you're planning to have a family and things like that, because you will have to get yourself and your family through the hard times. You're going to be an electrician, you're probably going to be able to have work for quite some time. Plumbers, you know, if you're a commercial plumber, you can do some residential. It's a little easier residential work, kind of, sort of. Because a lot of your work obviously is going to be in existing homes, tearing out, drive out, making holes and stuff. So, but I mean, you got a truck full of hammers, you'll be fine. Let's see what else we got. Oh, good thing. Go back. What? HCSS. Your lab partnership. Complete data tracking. Oh, yeah, that's right. So that's one of those things. I'm probably gonna do a stream completely separate, just to focus on the amount of AI construction companies are actually starting to use. Of course, we all know in construction, one of the things is that in order to be the most efficient, you have to learn how to leverage not only your labor, to your cash flow, but also to the technology available to you. Because there's a lot of technology that a construction company can bring in to help them become more efficient, to run the business better, to run the field better, and to do better material takeoffs, and you don't have as much waste, which is always great because less debris. You have the people that your laborers or your apprentices that have to spend less time picking things up, throwing them away, when they could actually be helping in a journeyman and actually learning. And this is one of those things that can be very costly for a company, and especially if it's not implemented correctly and you end up with a system that's there, but it's kind of hindered and you don't have sometimes you don't have full access to all the features. Either you couldn't afford it or they're just not there. Missing features. There was a company that I was working for not too long ago where they didn't want to use the Procore. They didn't want to use other tools that were available to them that were already full featured suites. Instead, they went to a company that what did they do? They pretty much were building software. It was web-based software, and so they had the servers, and I think actually the servers weren't in our office, and so they had access. But anyways, this company, what they did is that they pretty much, after talking with them for a bit and listening to how they replied to some of our questions, because we did have meetings where they're like, how do you like this? Is this feature working out for you? Do you need more robust features on something else? You know, so they were really working with us, listening and really tweaking it to get it to where we want. Of course, they're literally building another platform like PlanSwift or, you know, not a smart, like PlanSwift, Procore, you know, and those other project management software that's already on the market. It can do everything that they wanted to do, but they were paying this other company pretty much to build it from scratch, and it was frustrating because they had their old system, they had a server, and I think our guys actually had the administration to it, and then we had their new stuff, and even another service for just plan drawings to be coordinated correctly, that didn't integrate with the other two things. So I had to put all the drawings, the original drawings, everything into our system, and then upload them into the other system. The reason why is because the other system is actually what the other system was had the drawings, or the system with the drawings. You put the drawings on there, and then when you added new stuff, you have to put in the page number and the descriptions. And so then it would say, oh, this page number matches the old page number, so this is the new revision, and put it on top. Smart. The old system that they were using, that we uploaded drawings to, did not do that. So now the guys are like, is this the right page? And so when you went into the old system, you would have like 2 or 3 pages, and it was dependent on how we labeled them. Of course, I always labeled them with the version number and the date of upload in the file name. So you don't have to open up every single file in order to see which one was the latest version. But not everyone did that, so we would end up with files that were the same name. Now you have to go into when were they uploaded, but just because they were uploaded at that time didn't mean that that was the latest and greatest, because some people hung on to the 2 or 3 versions, and then when someone said, hey, is this the latest, because I think there were changes, oh, I forgot to upload them, let me upload them. Now they all have the same upload date, and it was insanity all the time. So then you're sitting there waiting there for download, and opened up. Then we finally got the viewer to work, finally did that. But at that point, it's like we've been struggling all this time. People just didn't want to listen. Like, there are tools already out there. Oh, but we already invested this much money into the system. Well, who told you? Who sold this to you? Because all these other systems do everything. But I guess apparently in the background, they ended up like somehow tying it to their financial stuff, their financial software, and this other things and this stuff. And it's like, you know, there's still these other companies that work together to give you all this stuff that you're asking. No need to do these things, but that's neither here nor there. They were also using some very complicated, very hard to use project, or not project, but scheduling software. I mean, I just went into, you know, it was like it was a 13-week project. There wasn't a lot of components to it. It's just time consuming. It took me like 4 hours and some YouTube videos just to make a very simple schedule. And then the boss, the project manager, says, hey, you know what, I need you to change this. Okay, so I have to go in. Oh, and I need you to show this delay. And I'm like, listen, that's getting like out of the wheel. I've been at this for 4 hours. This is taking way too long. So I actually had my laptop on me. I have my own personal license for Microsoft Project. I took it out, opened it up, recreated the schedule, put in the delays. Here, do we need a change? It literally took me an hour to make all the changes, everything that he wanted me to do. It took me an hour to do all that stuff, make the fonts, change colors. I want the bar, you know, the bar lines to look different for, you know, for the delay. I want to do this and that. Okay, like I said, like an hour. And after the changes, I was there for like an hour and 20 minutes. It's like, look, why are we using this other software that freaking sucks? Even our civil engineer on staff was like, well, here, I did the schedule, I made these changes, blah blah blah, and, you know, we're looking at it like, okay, well, it looks nice, right? Like, doesn't have our logo, doesn't have this. And they ask him, he's like, oh, all right, let me see, I gotta figure that out, I forgot how to do it. They hardly ever touch that scheduling program, because they usually got schedules from the GCs, and then they would just make an Excel spreadsheet and fill in squares, and it looks so bad, horrible, you know. So anyways, in the end, us, the project engineers and the project manager, he didn't have as much experience, but he saw how fast we worked on Microsoft Project that he endorsed it. We went to management, we went to ownership. I can't believe it still took them like 4 months to get the IT company to do the research and figure out the pricing and stuff and give us licenses for Microsoft Project. I'm like, dude, I went online, I got a key, I had it installed and everything within like 30 minutes, man. Right? It was a lot cheaper, of course. Like I said, it was my own personal license. They went through their channels, and of course, so they had to pay the IT company, they had to pay the IT guy for his time and doing the research and contacting a Microsoft partner and doing all that stuff. I'm like, dude, I just went online and I found this guy, and or not this guy, obviously, company. I paid, they sent me my license within like 10-15 minutes, not even that. I was up and running, man. It's, they even gave me the link that sent me to the Microsoft website, and it's like, they told me, take this one, download the trial, install it. When it asks you, and here's your key, unlock the whole thing. Like I said, within half an hour, I was up and running in Microsoft Project. Sometimes they make it so difficult, but once again, tangents all over the place. So, yes, there are plenty of things there are plenty of tools out there for us to use in the construction industry. You need to make sure you have the right people looking for it and searching for it, and making sure that it's going to do everything that the project management team needs it to do. It doesn't really always matter that it integrates with everybody else. I mean, that's a nice feature to have if we can get it. But as far as the AI leveraging that stuff, it usually works, especially if you're just running numbers, things like that. Nothing complicated where you have to have the AI make decisions for you, right? So it's easy enough. But there are some companies leveraging the AI and speeding things up, a lot of things, right? Or even helping to automate some of the processes in the office, so that it becomes a lot faster and more efficient, and it frees up people to actually like do other work that needs to be done, make phone calls and make those decisions, and just say, hey, with the AI, I need a report of all the customers or new customers that we signed up this week or this month in the last quarter. Easy enough. Wham, if it's gonna take you, even if it's gonna take you 30 minutes to get into the whatever your CRM software is or whatever, and get in there, adjust the reports, let's see, pick dates and this and that, AI will have it out to you in 30 seconds. So that means that now you can either call someone to take care of something else, run a human report, fill something out, send it in an RFI if a project manager or a project coordinator, sometimes a project engineer. So it's good, but you have to understand, just like all the other things, your hammer is a tool, the power drill is a tool, the saw is a tool. AI and technology is a tool to get the job done, not to get the job done for you. They're to assist. So in that vein, there's all these things that companies can use, but the biggest thing is there's no exception, there's no substitute to humans being there. AI might even be smarter at making decisions than some of the people, but there's a lot of factors that go into a lot of the decisions that are made in construction, and you have to have that human element sometimes to outweigh the pros and the cons, or to weigh out the pros and the cons, because we have seen times when AI just sidesteps their directives, honestly, which is scary. You need to put better guardrail on that. Yeah. So let's see. Cash flow constraints limit growth for commercial construction firms. I mean, yeah, of course. Why not? If you don't have the cash to fund, your projects, your people, materials, and all stuff like that until the next billing cycle, and then you get paid. I mean, it makes it tough. You have to start making decisions, laying people off in order to increase your cash flows, or you don't have as much cash going out, send them home, things like that, right? Let's see, mobilization fundings shows that each flow, that cash flow timing. Now, demand is a key factor limiting growth for commercial construction firms. And yeah, I mean, if you get $1 million contract, that $1 million contract, if it's for, let's say, a 3-month project, obviously it would be a little bit bigger one, but let's say you got a 3-month project. 3 months, that's 90 days. So even if you sign up, and in commercial construction, sometimes you can't get a deposit because the way the law in California, at least, is written is that technically, a general contract or a contractor cannot ask for more than 10% of the value of the contract or the work that's going to be done, right? Which usually is the worth of the contract, or $1,000, whichever is less. That's the constraint. So even if you're doing a $20,000 project, you can't ask more. You can't ask for more than $2,000 to start the project, technically. Now, some of these people get away with it by putting it in the contract, saying, "Hey, we need a 40% deposit, blah blah, and that." But it's because of the labor. Now, of course, the workaround around this is you can say, okay, here's the price, right, for all the labor, and here is the price of the materials. And you purchase the materials, and then we'll come in and we'll do the work. That is a workaround because you're not asking for money, you're asking them to pay the vendor directly to get the material site, which I believe is actually legal, or a little bit of a loophole to that whole thing with the deposit. Because even if you, for whatever reason, something happens where you can't perform, you can't get guys there, or you decide, you know what, we're going to terminate the contract, then the person, the owner, or whoever the entity, the purchaser, is not out that money because they have the material there. They just need to look for someone to come in and actually do the work. Whereas if you ask for a deposit, if you don't order the products, if you just skip town, now you're gone with their money, or that person is gone with their money, and they have nothing to show for it, which is horrible business practice. But as you can see, this is how they thought this would be a safeguard. But like I said, if they skip town, at least you didn't give them any money for labor, give them any money at all, and you have the materials there. Of course, that's the other thing, because you can go directly to the supplier and pay up front, right? You go in there, well, that's what it would be. It's too bad that without an account, you can't, with, of course, understand, without an account, you can't, you don't have credit with them. You're not going to just give you, $10,000 worth of materials and just say, okay, cool, pay me back after we invoice you. But back to cash flow. If you don't have enough to float your company or your labor for a month or two, or even 3, like I said, depending, because usually especially in public work, sometimes you're not seeing any money for 60, 75, 90 days. And if you mess up on the paperwork or something happens, you could be looking at 120 days. That's 4 months without cash on that project, which is why you always want to try, as a company, you want to try have a few projects going on at the same time, have them staggered in the different phases of construction that they're in, because when you bill, you're gonna have, especially like I said, in public works, this happens all the time. You put in your billing, a certain time. Sometimes the project manager on the client side will have questions, and they need clarification. They want you to break something down, and they have a set date where they submit the billing to to their bosses or approval. So you need to have that kind of, that time. You have to put it in ahead of time, anticipating how much work you're going to have done by the date that the billing is due to the client. So then that has to go through the channels, like I said, especially in public works. It has to go through the channels, get approved, go to accounting. They have to print out checks and get it to you. So you sometimes, and sometimes it has to go to city council, it has to go to the county, and they have to, discuss it and, in a public forum, officially approve it. And then from there, he goes back to their accounting department or whoever, and they have to do their rest of their paperwork now that they have approvals, blah, blah, blah. So like I said, you could be looking at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to get money. So now you're floating that project. Now multiply that or add to it all the other projects that you have that are in the same wheelhouse, the same type of thing where you're looking at 30, 60, 90 days before you get any money. This is why you need to have your projects staggered, in different phases along the project timeline, so that you can have money coming in every month, keeping the doors open, keeping the lights on, keeping your workers happy. Because what happens, you miss paychecks, they're going to leave because they're going to go find someone that can pay them. Okay, so this is why it's very important that your cash flow, you have to keep your cash flow going, right? And in the project management team, we need to be especially mindful of this, because we need to make sure that the billing gets in on the date. Actually, not even on the day, it should be early. Give them a few days, if not a week, so that they can look it over. And if they have any questions, if they need you to clarify anything or send in some additional paperwork or different paperwork, make corrections, you need to make sure that you give them enough time to look it over, send it back to you, so that you can make corrections and send it back to them. Project more than anything, project engineers, project managers need to make sure that they're on the project engineers, make sure that they get them all the info, so that, because the project manager is actually the one that submits the billing, so they need to look it over, make sure it's good to go, send it over. Any negotiations of things like that needs time. So you need to do all these things. And the thing is, you might have projects in different phases at that, obviously at any given time, but those monthly billings are due around the same time, so that you can do that in like a 30, 60, 90. You should be able to have with your ongoing projects, you should be dialed in, so that when you submit your paperwork, it's pretty much approved, right? Or in an approved manner, or in a state where it could be approved without it being kicked back, certain things, right? So then that works smooth, so you can have money coming in from all the projects, even though they're in different phases. So some of them are very front loaded, where you're going to get a lot of the money towards the beginning because of the ordering of the materials. You're going to have beginnings, right? If you have a project where you need excavation, there's going to be a lot of demolition in the front, and those guys are a bulk, or like a big portion of the project. When you submit, you can have that time. In public works, you're allowed as the GC to tell your subs, it's a pay when paid. So once you you get the check from the owner, you deposit it, and you have to give it those 3 days or whatever time, and then at that point you can release the funds to the contractor. So even as a subcontractor, you're going to look at a little bit longer, like a week and a half. But of course, once you get in that rhythm, it's not going to really affect you until there's a very drastic drop in revenue or money coming in during those times. So let me think. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Sorry guys, I'm just checking stuff real quick here. Oh, here. Yeah, I don't know if you are on YouTube listening. I don't know what's going on. I don't see chat. It's just an ongoing issue. So maybe this will get fixed next week, because I'm really toying with that idea of I'll do this Twitch early during the day, maybe to catch some of you guys on your lunchtime if you want to tune in during there. If you have a Twitch account, and I'll mention that in my YouTube live stream that I'll be here during the day. It'd be funny to get some people in here kind of asking like during their lunchtime, trying to get advice for stuff that's going on the field, right? Then go back and actually do that. That'd be hilarious. And then but yeah, I'll be on probably next week. I'll start being on YouTube, say like 4 to 6, catch you guys going home or even being at home already, right? A lot of guys get off at either 2:30 or 3:30 depending on what time you started and your trade. So yeah, YouTube starting next week, probably from 4 to 6. And we'll do Twitch here from 12 to 2, or even at 11 to 1 to catch some of you guys on your lunch times. Okay. Let's get back over to let's go. Oh, wrong one. Okay. So you know what? Just that one more time. Just moving you guys backward. I had you guys before, so you guys don't catch that. All right. Yeah, scaling operations. That's tough. Being here to see a survey of 250 U.S. subcontract or U.S. contractors and subcontractors. So you guys know, small sample. And it depends what size they are and everything. 90% say they have been passed on profitable projects due to cash flow challenges. Now, usually this happens on larger projects and municipal projects because they look at your portfolio, and some of them say, hey, I want you to submit your financials for the last 3 years. I want to see how strong your company is. And when I was working at one of the first GCs that I worked with, they weren't even a big company. They were going in to do like a $2 million project, and and it's public works. And one of the requisites for your bid was to submit the last 3 years, it wasn't the cash flow, it wasn't exactly the taxes. There was some particular financial thing that they were allowed to ask for, and so we were actually one of the 4 contractors that qualified, because we had, I think it was about 36 or 37 contractors. I mean, there were a couple subs, and when I mean a couple, I mean probably like 8 or 9 subs that were there during the job walk. But it was all general contractors in the area. And so it ended up weeding a lot of them out because, like I said, in the end, there was only 4 of us that were allowed to bid. And as you are in the space, you want to have at least 3 bids. If for the public opening, if there's only 2 if there's only 2 contractors, it might be an issue, but some of them actually are left at the discretion of the owner to say whether it was fine having just the 2 or if they want to put it back out to bid. But of course, putting it back out to bid means they have to spend the money again to advertise the project and have their people make tweaks to dates, bid dates, dates for questions, things like that. And then who knows, the architect or the designer might even have, this is going to extend the amount of time that we're going to be on the project, so extra money, put their hands out like everybody else to the owner. So it just kind of depends. But yeah, cash flow is definitely a thing that contractors worry about, and yeah, even owners worry about, especially on a downturn if they want to. But of course, during the downturn, a lot of owners won't even entertain the idea of getting the project off the ground, even putting it out for bid. Um, Sometimes they'll do the design work during these downtimes, and have the plans ready so that when the economy picks up and they're like, okay, they see a pretty bright future for the next couple of years, then they'll pull the trigger on it. You know, kind of depends what's going on in the construction world. All right, let's take a look at here. What else do we got? Anything like major? Because we also have, because of the manufacturing, right? Nvidia said they were going to bring $500 billion into the country of new fab production. TSMC, if you don't know, these are chip makers, right? Nvidia, big for their graphics cards, and they use some of their higher end chips for AI, and they have optimized them and are actively having new architecture for their new chips that are powering AI and powering graphics cards. And those are two different types of chips. They did start using their graphics cards chips for AI, but then they did separate the two and pivoted part of their company towards AI. So there's that. And so Intel recently, because I don't think they ever had graphics cards, but then I think it was at the beginning of last year or of 2025 or the end of 2024, Intel did start releasing GPUs. So they had, and of course they have their own foundries. They manufacture some, and then they order more from TSMC, who I believe is like the #1 chip manufacturer in the world. And it's, TSMC is the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company, I believe is what the TSMC stands for. And obviously Taiwan's in the name, is in Taiwan. They're huge, billions and billions of dollars every year. So they said to avoid the tariffs from Trump's before the big beautiful bill, Trump's tariffs, they were going to invest a whole bunch of money into building a foundry here. So jobs, because those foundries are, depending on the size, could be a couple years of actual build time after the design. And those designs can actually, I'm surprised, can actually get done pretty quickly, because it's more of the electrical and mechanical engineering than actual structural engineering, because they're just huge warehouses. So you make a skeleton, you have your foundation, which I know probably needs to be thickened here and there, and accommodate for MEP stuff coming through the plumbing and mechanical pipes, for cooling things. I mean, honestly, a lot of those pipes can be done overhead, except for for the manufacturing where they use water and use other things that needs to follow suit that. But I've also seen them do, right, because of cabling and things like that, you need to have a depressed slab in some locations in order to put cables, or even almost like a tray that they use as or water or even chemicals to flow, and they have grading on top of that, and then you can roll the machines over them and that. So once again, jobs out on the outskirts of towns, not quite in the middle of nowhere, but pretty far away. Guys, you might have a 45-minute drive there, and I don't mean a 45-minute drive like when you're going in the city here from like Orange County to LA County, or heart of downtown LA. It's going to be on the outskirts. So when you're driving 45 minutes, it's like you're doing 65 miles an hour for 45 minutes getting to the job site. So a lot there to do. But yeah, and that's part of manufacturing. But that's coming back. Apple said they're also investing another $500 billion, I think. Believe they've already announced plans that they're going to leave Cupertino. They're leaving California, their actual headquarters, and I think they're also moving to Texas because of the taxes. But they're going to need the facilities built, because especially if you've seen the campus here in California, it's a large, for lack of a better word, it's a big donut, right? It's round, it's open in the middle, they heavily, very environmentally conscious. They very much so, because of the engineers and stuff, make it very nice for them. Very sleek, very modern. Um, and so I don't know what the plans are for the campus here, or not here. Leaving here, California. I'm in California. Going to Texas. I've been seeing what their design is going to look like over there, but we'll see in due time. Texas Instruments, another big semiconductor company, I believe that yes makes calculators, but they also make chips for other things. That's very specialized thing. They might even have defense contracts, but they had announced probably like 3 years ago that they were expanding their facility, and I mean it was already a pretty big facility as it is, and they were expanding it to accommodate more manufacturing. So just kind of depends, what's going on. But like I said, going back to cash flow, those are large projects that need to be funded. You need to make sure you have plenty of cash on hand, plenty of cash flow coming in, because you're gonna have, right? Which is funny. One time I went to go deposit a check, because I had the company where I did structural steel with my dad, and I owned the company, and so I went and I took, a considerable check that I got into the bank. And so, oh man, look at that, big dollars. Yeah, but with big dollars come big bills. So managing cash flow is one of those things. Hopefully you hire the right people, or if you're part of that, you're doing your job well, so that you can keep the company insolvent, right? Or I'm sorry, not insolvent but solvent, so that there's no issues. The funds start drying up, industry starts slowing down, the market just kind of goes down. So yeah, let's see. But I mean, not a whole lot of like news going on right now. I think for next time I'll kind of take a look around and see if we've got any new products. I saw a really cool thing from, I think it's from Milwaukee, and there's those rebar cutters that make it a lot faster, where you don't have to be in there, right? It's just in a different style, where you don't, because I have seen where, right, obviously the traditional rebar cutters, it's you put your rebar in, you have the big handle, you pull down on it, so you're leveraging your own weight, your own strength, but to shear the rebar. Of course, obviously it's a lot easier to shear the lower grades and the smaller diameters of the rebar, but when you get into the bigger ones, and let's say you break apart a piece of concrete, right? You're tearing out a slab, but what you need to do is you need to still, from that slab, you need to extend it just in a different configuration, and there's rebar in it, so you have to selectively break out the probably stock cut the concrete all the way flush if you want, right? You just overcut, cut it off, come in, you can score where you need, you're going to need your rebar to extend out from in order to make the splice for the connection, or that you start breaking out the concrete on the other side. Now you have, you're going to have the rebar pieces sticking out. Clean them up. You need to trim them off, or if they get bent, if you go back, right, you break up close to where you need the new stuff to go, you got some ends that are bent or whatever you can do, you need to cut them. How are you going to cut them? You can't leverage your weight completely, because now there's no platform for it, nothing solid underneath it to cut it. There are saws. I believe Milwaukee made a saw that is just like a skill saw and a specialized blade, and you can cut all kinds of metals, from rebar, mild steel, copper, and all kinds of other, the aluminum. It's a saw, cut stuff with it. But are you really going to be going along and using a saw where you need that lateral space to get it? And it was probably like a 13 or 14 inches in length, so you might not, and it was like probably about this tall, so you're not gonna fit that everywhere. Sometimes you only have 12 inches, right, 1 foot, and if it doesn't fit, or if you're just in an awkward angle, what do you do? So it really was almost like a bandsaw type of thing. Was it a bandsaw type of thing? No, actually, I think it was a grinder, but it was more along the same plane. It had the guard, looked like a C, right? Then you could see the blade in here. You see the cutoff wheel, and so you can use it like this. Cut your rebar like this if it's down at an angle, or not, so you can just cut it like this. It was pretty efficient, went pretty quick, but of course you have to replace that wheel. I don't know how the rate of how fast that wheel actually gets ground down, and to how much space and where it goes. Obviously, by the time it hits the tool and you're not able to cut anymore, or your rebar hits the tool, so you can't cut completely. You need to. I don't know how that works, but it looked pretty cool. It looked pretty fast. Looks like it looked pretty fast. What else we got? This for construction news? Anything? Oh, look at that. What do we got going in concrete? 3D. Oh yeah. I think we're gonna have to do something. Gonna have to do a whole thing about this. 3D concrete here in California. I think there were plans. I know for a fact that there were plans for a small community to be completely 3D, like concrete 3D printed. I'm not sure if that went through or not. I will do some research. It'll probably be for next week. But I've seen these guys, do the 3D printing of the concrete. And it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool, except you end up with that. So I need to see kind of how they finish interior walls. Because you want them smooth, but they don't smooth this out. They leave it hardens this way. All the ridges from in between the prints. And then, as the concrete is printing, right, they start shoving, they'll put cross pieces of rebar in there. They start putting verticals in there. But of course, with the cure time of these things, I don't know what that is. Obviously, it's going to be more difficult at the bottom than the top when you start putting them in from the top. So I need to take a look and see like what lengths they use. Is it standard length? Do they splice them actually? Right? Because the nozzle needs to flow directly over it, and the concrete needs to have a lot thicker, a lot taller slump, because it's coming out of the hose, so that it doesn't just go all over the place. It needs to stick to itself, like as we see in this picture here. So, it's just one of those things that like I said, I'm gonna have to do the research on. Maybe even get some videos of them pouring that, because I've seen one really funny video of the what do you call it, the outlet where it comes out of, and they put something on it. So yeah, I think I'll do some stuff with that. Let me see. I'm gonna go back and open up the Twitch. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's not working. Oh no, I just clicked. Oh yeah, I just clicked on the wrong. I don't know, which not cool. So yeah, so I've been going, what is this, like an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. I think maybe we'll cut it off short here, and I'll just get ready for tomorrow and stuff and see. Like I said, next week I think I'll do Twitch Monday, Tuesday, and I'm gonna update on my Twitch page. I will put in the schedule, so on Twitch it will be, I think, like I said, either 11 to 1. I think actually would work better for construction workers. If you're, like I said, if you guys are on site, if you want to catch this broadcast, and you guys can jump in and ask questions at any time, feel free to do that. If you're watching this right now, you see right there in the corner, what side is it? Let me see. There we go. So if you look, I think it's actually down in the corner right here. You guys can support me on like Ko-Fi. I don't know, but everybody always says, you know, buy me a coffee. Um, and we really appreciate it. That would really help me in doing this. And also when I go out, right, for gas money and maintenance of the drones, you go, if you haven't seen, if you check out my YouTube channel, I've also posted on Instagram and Twitter the footage from the Westminster Mall that's becoming the Bolsa Pacific development, where they have all of those housing units that are going to go up. They're going to redo the shopping there. They're going to have some green spaces, right, like small walking areas, parks. And then I found out that actually the Chase Bank is staying and the US Bank is staying, which I didn't realize that the US Bank was going to be staying. I thought they were going to be gone. The other thing I found out is that that whole entire property is not one parcel. It's actually divided into a bunch of parcels. So like when the company that purchased the property actually like bought, I think, the Sears property first, the Macy's property, and where the other outskirts buildings, like where the Babies R Us was, that's a parcel in itself, right? The Chase Bank is another parcel, but they had to buy those parcels separately, which is why I believe the Chase is staying and the US Bank is staying. I believe those are their own parcels, and I don't know if they're in on the update. So then when Bolsa Pacific is going on, if they're gonna, you know, redo their parking lots, maybe spruce up the building a little bit, change their landscape to change the motif of Bolsa Pacific that's going to be there. I don't know if they're going to repaint their buildings at any point. I don't know, but all I know is that they're not going anywhere for now. But we'll touch on that more later as things go on. But yeah, back to, you know, any support, $1, $5, whatever. You know, you're not gonna hear me saying this all the time, every video. I might mention, hey guys, buy me a coffee, you know, if you can spare it. It's not necessary, it's not required. There will be no paywalls here as far as the streaming stuff goes. I'm thinking about maybe doing some stuff. I mean, on YouTube, I might turn on channel membership when that becomes available. Maybe do some behind the scenes things, but any support that anybody here, anybody in this community gives me would be awesome. Now I'm thinking, as the community grows, about doing some fundraisers to have prizes to give away for, you know, people, the young ones coming up that want to do the construction industry, maybe even trade school. It doesn't even have to be construction, but something that this country really depends on, that young people need help to get into the industry or getting into something they really love, that is something that is not emphasized enough, because not everyone is made for school. You know, there was a point in here in the US in the education, in the college system, where we had 5 lawyers graduating from law school for every engineer. And that's just an engineer, like, generally didn't matter if he was a structural engineer, just a civil engineer, professional engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, didn't matter. But we had 5 lawyers graduating for every single engineer, and that's just wrong. How are you gonna have a society built just on having that many lawyers? Yeah, you might have the law, but who's gonna build the courts? Who's gonna update and renovate their places of practice, right? So that's why I do believe in a strong country that needs manual labor to get society, to move society forward, right? And building things and keeping infrastructure going and keeping our society as a modern society, keep pushing forward. So like I said, at some point, and at that point, it would be a matter of going on to coffee, if I get a Patreon at that time, to put a comment in there and, you know, like, this is for the fundraiser, this is to support this, and it would be 100% full transparency. Show you, I'll even probably record myself or even try to live stream, you know, going to the Home Depot or the Lowe's or wherever and buying these things and getting these prizes, you know, donating to a trade school. We can even do that. That's kind of my goal of, you know, getting there. But like I said, any support right now that can be offered, I would really much appreciate it. I know I don't have anything to give back in return right now other than, you know, this live streaming stuff. But like I said, I would really like to, you know, really get into helping out the community whenever possible. You know, really giving back and really helping people, changing people's lives, or at least put them on that path where they can, you know, do something for themselves or their family, right? So yeah, the link should be in the description. I'm not sure, like I said, about Twitch. I know on YouTube I put my description on there. I think I updated it. Yeah, that was my phone. I forgot to put my phone on silent. Oh, there's a couple things actually that came in all at the same time. But anyways, I think what we're gonna have to do is we're just gonna have to end it here. Oh, that's just my trash, more trash. Anyways, guys, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Like I said, next week, look for me here, probably between 11 and 1. And, you know, on Twitch and on YouTube, I'll be here from 4 to 6. So I won't be here at this time on YouTube starting next week, all right? Remember, it's going to be in the afternoon, the evening time, really, from 4 to 6 usually. Wednesdays will be a day off, and I will see about maybe even streaming Saturdays. Don't want to bother you guys Sundays. Family time, right? Something I respect. So if there's something breaking, if there's a construction accident, who knows, I might go on live at that time regardless of when it is, right? It was, of course, during the week, might even on a Wednesday, if something happens, I might even hop on to talk about it, right? All right, cool, sounds good. So let me get everything set up here. I need to get my stream deck out and ready to go for, you know, this stuff. All right, so anyways, oh, you know what, let's go back to the menu. I'm being sign off around here. Oh, here we go. You guys got me big, large again, larger than life. Anyways, so I think that's what, like I said, where we're at right now. Just like to have these kind of chill streams, just kind of hang out. Or it'd be nicer when we get people in here to start interacting with and asking questions. And when I get that damn YouTube chat fixed, but I think it's gonna be fixed if I don't do the multi-streaming. Okay. So we'll see. I'm gonna have to just adjust my software and things like that. All right. So thanks for being here. I'll see everyone tomorrow, and then, like I said, separate streams next week, and we should be all good. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you guys later. See you tomorrow.